Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges, as he explores turning the page on his life and yours.
Welcome, everyone, to the next chapter with Charlie. My very special guest today is a dear friend, Taryn Voget, an explorer of what it means to be genius. Taryn writes this: genius isn't just for prodigies, it's for anyone willing to tap into their unique gifts. Obviously, Taryn Voget understands genius from a very different perspective than what many of us grew up with. Let's explore some of her observations as we bring her on the show. Taryn Voget, welcome to the next chapter with Charlie.
Charlie, thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you're happy. You say that now, but the show hasn't even started yet. So
We're just getting rolling.
At the end of the show, you may say, God, what did you put me through? I thought we were friends. Why'd you make me do this?
Never.
So I told you, I'll tell the guest, usually I have sort of a Miles Davis planned flowchart that I use for my podcasts, and it's like I provide the rhythm and the melody, and you provide the solo that goes on top. That was the way he wrote his first album, All in Blue, I think it's called, and so this is going to be Miles Davis, except we're just jumping past all of the pre-recorded notes and just jumping into the solos. And I've got two solos for you. We're going to talk about what is the everyday genius, and we're going to talk about the Genius Lab. And you said, oh gosh, we're going to find something else to talk about. I'm telling you, that's going to take our time. But whatever you want to use, I want you to feel happy to use.
I love those questions. That's a great place to start. And to answer your first question, what is the everyday genius? I'll give you the answer and then a little bit of backstory, because it's kind of fun how I even came up with that. An everyday genius to me is somebody who is really exceptional at what they do, but they just might not have a Wikipedia page. And you might think of someone like the best server that you've ever had at a restaurant, or someone who's just incredible with kids, or someone who is just an incredible artist that might not make the big headlines, but you walk by their stuff and you just feel the beauty of their work. And to me, there is everyday genius all around us. And to me, that is so special, and I love the energy of it as much as I love the mega geniuses that do have the Wikipedia pages and all the fame.
Yeah, all 12 of them.
Yeah, and so the everyday genius to me is people that have found their passion, and they have worked that passion and gotten better over time to the point where they're able to channel some things through them that are just really brilliant. And you see that in just moments of perfection all around us. And every time I leave my house, I notice the everyday genius. I just was at the store today buying a birthday gift, and the guy ringing me up was so fun, and you could just tell he had a certain spark and genius about him, and it was so simple. It was just making customers happy. And to me, there's a genius in that. And a lot of people misunderstand what genius is. They think, oh, well, genius is an IQ test, and genius is fame, and genius is doing something mega or an invention. And that is all true. That is all genius in a way, but it doesn't fully describe what genius actually is. And I've had a lot of people over the years come through my Genius Lab, and I've been able to deconstruct how some of the world's best do what they do. And I've realized that genius actually has nothing to do with IQ at all. So that's the short answer. The sort of background is about 15 years ago, I was at a career crossroads trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And I was coming off a lot of corporate consulting, burned out, ready to do my own thing, not work for some other project. And I just
How long ago was that?
Oh, it was 15 years. 15 years ago. It was 2009.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that 15 years? That's about 15 years, maybe 16 now. I lose track of time.
Yeah.
And I was wrestling with this for maybe 5 or 6 months, and I just couldn't figure out what that thing was. And I was driving over the Golden Gate Bridge. I was coaching in a psychology class on the weekends, and I was driving over the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah.
Coaching in a psychology class.
Yes.
You have the weirdest things that you just take for granted. It's like people take their genius for granted. We're going to talk about that people need to be reminded that they have a genius. They don't know it. But coaching in a psychology class, what does that mean?
I was taking, this was before I coached in the class, but I was taking this really interesting psychology class on human behavior and how people think, which I think is just fascinating. And I was so into it. The guy that was teaching it said, "Hey, do you want to come back and be a coach in the class?" Because he just needed some additional support to manage. It was a pretty large class. I want to say it was 70 people or something.
Oh.
So I came back to coach in the class. And actually, it's a crazy story. So I was coaching in the class. I think it was on a Saturday. And I'm driving over the Golden Gate Bridge it was early morning, I don't know, 8 o'clock in the morning. And all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, this flash of lightning just hit my head. And I saw the whole thing for what became the Everyday Genius Institute. I saw the name, I saw what to do, how to do it, and the whole thing flashed in my mind in just a lightning bolt moment. And that's when I thought, oh my God, that's my idea. That's it. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go build the Everyday Genius Institute, which I did 15 years ago. And then when I got to class—
15 years you've done this?
Yeah, well, I took a little break and I've come back to it recently. But yeah, the original version of Everyday Genius started about, 16 years ago now. And what the crazy thing was is I got to class. It must have been the first day of class because I had just met this guy. And he was I go to class and everyone's doing introductions and I meet one of the top wine tasters in the world. And he actually teaches master sommeliers how to become master sommeliers. So like the best of the best of the best. And I thought, wouldn't that be such an interesting Everyday Genius project? And it just served up to me right there. I had the idea. 30 minutes later, an hour later, I had my first Everyday Genius and the whole thing took off and we did a bunch of products. And what it was at the time was a packaged educational series with a book and a video where you could learn how the world's best do what they do and how they think about it so you could shortcut your learning curve. So I always thought the dummy series was actually hard, and this would be a way to streamline.
Dummy series was hard.
Yeah, and so the ironic part is the Genius series is supposed to be easy, and it would be to take something complicated and make it simple so that you get the strategy for how to do something at a really high level and not go through those 20 years of learning. So that was the Everyday Genius Institute, but that's where the name came from, and I had a lot of everyday geniuses come through my Genius Lab. And then I took a bit of a break from it, and I went back into consulting and working with executives and CEOs and doing some other stuff. But I
needed money.
I needed money. Well, it was more like that was part of it. That actually was true. But also having a product business, I realized requires a huge amount of marketing, which actually is not my personal passion. So I found a lot of what I was doing actually wasn't that fun because sales and marketing is actually not really my favorite thing to do. I like building things. And so what I realized in doing that was that in order to really take it to the next level, I needed a significant amount more capital to hire out a team to do the stuff that I just couldn't and wasn't good at doing. And so Everyday Genius was great and it did have success and I'm super proud of the work, but I set it down because it was a really intense 4 or 5 years of just massive creative output. I mean, massive creative output, building something that had never been built in the world, which is this model of how to deconstruct genius, and then trying to package that up into a consumer product where people could learn. I mean, no one's done it in this way, and it just took a lot of energy to do. And so after about 4 or 5 years, I set it down, went to do some other things, and then just somewhat recently in the last year, I've come back to it, but in a different way. And my latest passion is actually doing the Everyday Genius show, which is on YouTube and Spotify. So that's what I've been up to.
So you believe almost, there's this generic term genius, and then there's a Taryn Voget version of which you're not genius. The rest of us are not genius as much as we have a genius. Is that right? There's a genius aspect to each of our lives, and identifying that and living into that. It may run our lives, but still, you don't say, "Oh, well, I'm a genius." No, I like this. And am I misinterpreting something? I have a genius.
Everybody has a genius. And to me, that's that unique thumbprint that their soul carries into this embodiment that wants to express itself. And there's a unique thumbprint in everybody. And the question is not whether are you or are you not a genius? It's, are you taking your natural gifts and abilities, your interests, your passion, and doing something with it? And I think it's really easy to get jammed up on the term genius. And the problem is that people use the term genius as a noun, like, oh, he is a genius.
Right.
But here's the problem with that, which is, at what point on someone's journey would you say that they're a genius? I mean, take anybody that might be what I might call a mega genius. They sucked early on. Ed Sheeran is one of my favorites. I think he's utterly brilliant. The musician Ed Sheeran. And he leaves up old videos that he had made when he was 15 years old. And when you listen to him, they're almost painful to the ear, but he leaves them up to make the point that I'm about to make, which is, he didn't start off brilliant. He just took something he was passionate about and he worked it to the point that now it looks like genius to the outer world. So was he a genius at 15, or is he only a genius now? So genius isn't something that is static. And so the better way to think about genius is, are you geniusing? Because I would say that Ed Sheeran at age 15 was geniusing. He was taking his passion and he was working it and getting better and improving over time to the point now where it looks like genius. And if you look at any of the greats, it's the same thing. Leonardo da Vinci, I read Walter Isaacson's biography. Nobody thought Leonardo da Vinci was brilliant at age 20. They thought he was a sort of substandard human. And he just, was he a genius or not at age 18, 20? And so he took his passion and his interest and he did something with it. So it's less about thinking.
But you're leaving out a couple of other things. It's passion, interest, but it's also skills. There's skills and talents involved, are there not?
Yeah. So the way I define genius is when, and this is after really deeply studying and researching how genius works, is that I've realized it's when three things come together. And it's when someone's
three things,
and these three things come together. And the truth is that Ed Sheeran at age 15, you at age 15 and age whatever you are now, everybody that is doing something that they're enjoying or interested in is doing these three things. Now it's just a question of at what level. So here's the three things. The first one is passion. Are you doing something that you're excited about and passionate about? And the reason that that is such a fundamental element of genius is that it provides the fuel to keep going and to keep getting better and to keep improving. It also provides a bunch of other really cool things. And I talked about this actually in a recent video, which is when you're operating from your passion, it's an incredibly high vibrational state.
Okay.
You know, if you think about sadness being all sad and depressed, like that's a low vibration. Happiness, joy, excitement, that's all high. The higher vibration state you're in, you attract things at a similar vibrational level.
Yes.
And so when you're doing what you love and you're excited and you're passionate, you bring more cool things to you. So when you see people that are mega geniuses in the world or that have some fame or notoriety, they're doing what they love. And the world is responding by bringing them more cool things because they're operating at a really high frequency. And this is true with the everyday genius too. I mean, not everybody wants that kind of mega stardom, and you can be an absolute genius in your own reality and have really great things come to you. So that passion provides a number of great benefits. So one is the fuel, two is the vibrational benefits that come from operating on your passion. And I always say that there's a law of the universe that the universal law is what you put out is what you get back. So when you put out sad and depressed, what you're going to get back, more things to be sad and depressed about. When you put out happiness, joy, passion,
right,
you get more happiness, joy, and things to be passionate about. And so it really is just a cosmic physics game that we're all playing.
You know, and what
people
you're
that are
defining
doing
right
what
now,
they
too?
love are just playing the physics game. What was that?
You know what you're defining right now too?
Huh.
Karma.
That's a way to think about karma, yeah.
Karma is not a tit for tat. It's not transactional. It's not like I do a good deed and good things come to me. It's that I have a state of being of goodness. And that state of being is exactly what you're describing, and it attracts goodness. it attracts those kinds of people. But if I have a state of being of woe is me, then I'm going to attract woe is me people, and my life is going to suck even more.
Precisely. Oh, and then to the point of karma too, the actions you put out are also the actions that come back to you. So, what are you putting out? Are you putting out, cheating on your partner or lying or doing things that maybe aren't in the best good for yourself and others? Well, you're going to just guess it's going to boomerang right back. And this is just how reality works. Whatever we put out with our emotions, with our energy, or with our actions all come back to us. So if we want to dramatically shift our reality to something better, putting out a higher vibration energy of excitement and passion and joy, it's just going to bring us more of that back. So that's a little physics lesson that really applies to genius, because that really is the key ingredient to genius. And so many people struggle with trying to figure out what their passion is. And to me, that's like wasted genius, because it really is the fuel for greatness. Now, not everybody wants to go do that with a career, but passions can be hobbies. They can be doing things with your family. They can be just everyday things, singing at your church. I mean, it doesn't matter the context, as long as it's something that lights you up. So passion is the first element of genius. The second one is what I call strategy. And the strategy is...
Can I talk about passion first? I was thinking I'll come back to it, but let me... you said when I was 15, and then I went through the decade that I've often called my dark decade of the 1970s, when I was in my 20s. And it was, I'm just an ex-hippie, college dropout, UCLA dropout, to become a hippie. And I didn't express any of my intelligence or any of my skills. I really didn't even know, Taryn, I really didn't even know I owned them. I didn't even know that was part of me. But what was always a part of me, and that, I did at 19 years old, I hitchhiked across the country. And it was a passion driven by curiosity. And I was just passionate to fill and answer this curiosity. And so instead of 15 years of producing and doing things, I was still discovering. It was 15 years of data gathering. I had no idea that was not intentional, but that's what I was doing. But I was very passionate about it, about the whole part of the process. So my geniusing started with no productivity, but with passion that led to it all.
Well, I think that's a beautiful point. And this is where that experience and what you gained from that provided you the insight, the perspective, the context for things you've done after. So it's not like we can look at our life and think, okay, here's how I'm going to map it out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go travel, backpack through the country for 5 years, and then I'm going to go do this job, and then I'm going to go do this job. There's just no possible way you would ever be able to map out your future. And yet, by following your passion, that leads to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, until you look back over your life and you realize how all those dots connected, and all of them brought you the skills and the abilities to do the next thing. And then that brings you to the ability to do the next thing and the next thing. And they all build on each other. And it's like our soul can see a roadmap that our little human mind can't. And it whispers to us through the energy of passion and excitement, like, go do this. It's really next. And it will tee up everything that you want right now, plus tee you up for the next thing later. And that's why excitement is such a powerful emotion.
I love it. That is really helpful, because I realize not only now as you're talking about it, that is sort of determined. I've had so many different kinds of careers, but it's all based on me following a passion, an opportunity. An opportunity arises, and many times opportunities arise, you just don't pay attention to them. But every now and then an opportunity would come up, and I go, "Oh man, I got to try that." And that's something new, and I just kept doing something new all the time until I got to retirement, and now here I am figuring out what's new, what's going to be new in my life.
And I think you're a beautiful example of what I would call an everyday genius. You've followed your passion. You've built all these skills. You've got an incredible ability to communicate. And we can talk about that when we talk about the Genius Lab, because you were in my Genius Lab.
I was.
Yeah.
Painfully.
And then you wake up and you realize, wow, all of this mattered. Everything I did mattered. I couldn't see how it connected at the time, but looking back, you can see there is a through line.
A through line. Good phrase.
I read an interesting stat that Nobel Prize winners on average are 66 years old. I think that was the number, 66.
When they
They're
win
older.
the Nobel Prize?
And this is because often our best work comes later because we've amassed a lot of experience, perspective, and we can pull things together in a way that is really hard to do when you are 20.
Well, you're so distracted.
But sometimes you just need more experience. Now, not to say there's not some absolutely, utterly brilliant young people. There are. It's just more often than not. And I think some disciplines favor this more than others. It just takes some decades of experience.
Okay, I got you off. Let's go to strategy or strategic or whatever you were in
Yeah, so back
number
what
two.
we were talking about, the 3 elements of genius, which was passion is the first one. And that's all those benefits we talked about. So the second element of genius is what I call strategy. And strategy has a number of elements to it, a lot of patterns that I've noticed. But really what strategy is the how. How does somebody do what they do? How are they thinking about it? How are they approaching it? What are the steps they are taking? What's the how? And strategy gets better over time. And if you think about anything that you learning early on, your strategy is pretty basic. Like, for example, I learned to play pickleball a couple of years ago. And when I was first learning to play pickleball, my basic strategy at the time was learn the rules and get the ball over the net, not into the net. And now that I've been playing for a few years, my strategy has improved. How I'm thinking about it and approaching it's improved, meaning I'm thinking now, what's my court placement? How do I keep the players back? Or where do I hit? Or how do I do a shot that has a spin? I mean, I'm thinking about it in a more sophisticated way. And there's more and more and more levels to strategy until you reach a point where your strategy looks like mastery. So strategy is a really important part because almost nobody, unless they're a prodigy, comes out of the gate being exceptional at something. Most people have to work at it a bit and use their passion to drive that to do so. So that's the second element. Now, the third element is where I think the genius looks like genius. So you've got passion plus strategy. And then the third element is what I call channeling. And channeling is where we tune into something bigger than us. I call it the quantum field. It's more of a state than a place, but we tune in and we're able to get great ideas, inspirations, moments, or just channel something really brilliant through us. And everyone's had this experience where you have that light bulb moment in the shower or when you're driving, or you've just been in a flow state. Athletes talk about this a lot where they're just in the zone and everything just stops and they're really present. So the quantum field is more of a state than a place. And when we can access all of that, really brilliant things can come through us. So when you have passion plus great strategy plus channeling, and those three things come together and they come together often enough, it looks like genius. And yet it's somebody using their intent to make that all happen. So that's really how genius actually works, which is why I say that people are not a genius, they're geniusing. And we just call them a genius after those elements come together enough and we can see their brilliance in action.
I want you to talk more about channeling because, when I hear channeling, I'll be candid. When I hear channeling, I'm thinking of way back in the New Age, and you're talking a whole different sort of.
Yeah, it's a fancy word for something.
Yet they are related.
Yes and no. I mean, it's a fancy word for something that we're all hardwired as humans to do, which is realize that we're connected to something bigger than just us. And when we are connected into something bigger than just us, and we feel it all the time, it's like we all have those moments where we're sitting in a group and we just feel really connected, like at a concert or at church, or maybe there's a really cool meeting at work and you just feel really connected. We're just hardwired to feel connected into something more than just our little experience. And it's also where you can access, like the quantum field is all around us. Like we are part of this bigger field, and scientists have called it the quantum field. We're all part of it. Like we are the matter within it. And when we can get outside of our little mind and just tune into the bigger part of what we're connected to, the information of the universe is available at our fingertips almost. And this is where, like I said, when you're in the shower, you're driving, you get great ideas. Well, where'd that great idea come from? Well, you were relaxed. You weren't thinking about anything. You kind of wandered into a place where you felt a little more connected, and poof, bop, the idea just dropped in. The thing about the quantum field state is that it's not a doing state, it's more of a receiving state, which is why it's a lot easier to get connected in when we're relaxed and we're actually not thinking about anything. When athletes are in the zone, that's sort of another way to connect in, where you actually feel very actively connected into something bigger, and it's almost like time stops and you just feel your connection to all of it. And then really magical things are possible. And I'm thinking about a basketball player that I heard on an interview talking about it, where he talks about getting in that zone a lot, and that's how he connects in. Writers talk about this a lot. Oh, I was in the flow. It just came through me. The writing came through me. I recorded a video the other day for my Everyday Genius show. And man, if that just didn't channel through me, I didn't have a script, nothing. And it was just 20 minutes of nonstop, and I riffed and it came out perfect. I mean, that was a channeled moment. Now, it takes practice to get into that state and to let that come through us, or it takes intent, meaning that I had the idea to do something new with my career. The idea for the Everyday Genius Institute dropped in a light bulb flash moment. Now, those kinds of channeled moments are super fun. I think the more common is the everyday of, oh, wow, that idea is really cool. Let me go do that thing. They're just really small, subtle whispers more often than not. But everyone's channeling all the time. We're tuning in and we're getting information and we're taking action on it. That's just a human hardwired thing that we do. People that are good at what they do are just doing it slightly more intentionally. They've got a strategy to do that in a way that gets better results.
You know what else? What else occurred to me that it's also there's a certain degree of confidence that I am confident when I get into this zone. I'm confident that I can get into this zone, and when I'm into that zone, the desired outcome comes naturally, and I have no idea what the strategy was around it. It's just that I'm into that zone, and that zone is all that matters. Is when I get that on the show, like right now. I'm in a zone in this show, and just so much eating up what you're saying, paying attention, and at the same time confident that the show is going to be good when it's all done. I have no doubt.
Well, and that's a perfect segue into the Genius Lab, because you just said, I have no idea how I do it, but I'm doing it. And this is what I find so interesting, is that people that are really good at what they do have no idea how they do it. And
first of all, many don't even know they're doing it.
Exactly. And it's because a couple things. Number one, it feels obvious to you. Number two, you've just made these micro improvements over time to the point where you're quite good, but you had no idea all those little micro improvements you made. You never stopped and analyzed them. And so I built a Genius Lab to deconstruct how people do what they do, that they have no idea how they're even doing. It's like, well, let's talk about your Genius Lab. You came into my Genius Lab a bunch of months ago because I do think you have a very special genius. And the genius we deconstructed for you was how you come up with talks that you want to give. And they're very divine, beautiful, heartfelt, God-inspired talks, and they're beautiful. And you said, well, I don't really know how I go about coming up with them. They just come to me, I think was the words you used. And so in my Genius Lab, I was curious, how do they come to you? How do you do it? And over decades, you've come up with a beautiful strategy for how to create these incredible talks. And unpacking it, you look at it and you're like, oh, well, that's obvious, but it wasn't obvious until it got unpacked, if that makes sense. What was your experience in the Genius Lab?
Oh, besides being painful?
Sorry.
It's hard. It's really, don't try to, that's the first thing you know to put on here. This is not for pansies.
Why did you think it was hard?
Because you forced me to go to places and evaluate things that I have always taken for granted, that I was not allowed to take for granted. I had to evaluate, analyze, and define them. And that was a whole new language. It was just a whole, I was speaking in Russian at the end of our time together. And So it was difficult because I was so familiar with the topic, and yet so familiar, I was unfamiliar with what details it assumed. And so that's what made it difficult. That's what made it painful, is that it was so thought provoking. And how long did we do that? It was like 2 or 3 hours,
I was
right?
probably close to, usually my Genius Labs run about 3 hours. And
I
I
think
found
so.
that that's
Yeah.
where you can get some really juicy stuff. Yeah. So for the viewers or the listeners tuning into this, what we're talking about here is taking something that happens in a split second in someone's mind and
Right.
unpacking that split second into 20, 40, 50 steps that are actually going on. Because when people get good at something, it happens so fast in their mind and they can't slow it down enough. And so the Genius Lab is, as Charlie's words, painful because you're taking something that is a split second and really unpacking it to
That's it. That's
micro
helpful.
a micro steps that really aren't micro when you actually see them, but in your mind they're just, and that is where the genius is, and that's where all the juicy stuff is. What we always do when we start the Genius Lab is I'm always asking, well, one thing that we actually start with is, what is someone's actual genius? Like, what is their actual gift? And it's an intuitive ability that I have to tune into someone's soul and hear what that thumbprint is, if you will.
Yeah, that
And
is a gift you have.
yeah, and so with you, and as a matter of fact, I pulled up the notes. Let's get your exact one because I thought it was a really beautiful soul gift that you came in with, and your genius, and I really deeply believe this to be true about you, Charlie, is articulating the divine and articulating the nature of God and inspiring others on their journey. That is your soul gift, articulating the nature of God and inspiring others on their journey. And to me, that's you. That is really you.
Articulated in a way that people can grasp.
Yes.
And they can understand. And that's the challenge, and that's the beauty of it.
And this is where mastery comes in. When you were 18, 20, 25, or whenever you went into seminary, you came in learning how to do this.
30 and 32.
Okay, there we go. You came in with this passion to do something about this. And yet, I'm sure at age 30, your sermons looked one level. And at age 70, they look different. And that's because mastery happens over time, right? And what's really cool, so the first thing in the Genius Lab is for me to really tune in, what is someone's unique soul gift? And then from there, picking an example where they did that at a very high level, almost at their best, one of their best moments. And then unpacking that, because what's so important about deconstructing how genius works is people think they know what they do, but they don't actually know. So we've got to pick an example, a real world example. And I think for you, we picked one where you had written a sermon for a recent talk that you gave at your church.
Mm-hmm.
And you thought it went really well. And so we take that example and then we just pick it apart to your point where it's painful to see, okay, well, how did you go about creating it?
Because you just described it. You're talking microseconds. You're talking putting microseconds into words, and I haven't gone there at all.
Yeah. So the first thing we do is we look at, what are your goals? What are you optimizing for? Now, people think goals, I want to make $1 million this year or lose 10 pounds. Those aren't the goals I'm talking about. They're when you're sitting down to write a sermon, to articulate the nature of God and inspire others. When you sit down to write that, what are your goals in that exercise? What are you trying to achieve? What are you optimizing for? What's important for you to do in this moment? And those are what I call the goals. And that's a really key part of that strategy element that we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing with goals, and this is always how I can tell someone's going to have exceptional results, is when we have a goal, and let's just read one of yours because I thought you had a few really good ones.
Oh, really?
I would call them genius level goals. And your goals for writing a talk, a couple of them are, have the audience feel awe and wonder of the divine and how it impacts everything. That was one goal. Another goal, which I thought was also brilliant,
need another goal.
Yeah, and yet I think we came up with 20 or 30 here. Another one was be a vehicle for the divine and let it move through me. And that's what I would call channeling. Be a vehicle for the divine and let it move through me and share it with the audience. Collect the love, beauty, and wonder from my heart and hold it open so I can lay it upon everyone else.
Really,
Beautiful
I said
goal.
that?
I would call that a genius level goal. And then one more I'm going to share because I thought it was cool, which is share the speech so passionately and so well that the audience is almost caught off guard with these words. Oh my God, it's God, or holy shit, it's God, this is real. Now, those three goals I would put in the category of genius level goals. And here's why, because everything we do, all the action we take, is always in support of achieving those goals. And yet, until that moment we deconstructed it, you didn't even know those goals existed. And so this is why I say it's so subconscious. I know that your speech is going to be brilliant just because the goals you have for it are so good. Now,
And
to
even,
contrast
even though
that,
they're not, even though they're not stated,
they're just
they
operating in some
resonate.
subconscious pattern in your mind, some subconscious routine in your mind. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that contrasts with probably when you were early on in your career giving talks. Often what happens with speakers is that they're more worried about themselves than the audience. Like, how do I make sure I look good? How do I make sure I don't make a mistake? How do I make sure that, I'm articulate? And it's a lot of stuff that's a little more internal. And I think as speakers evolve, their speaking career becomes much more about what the audience is experiencing. And that's just a great example of strategy getting better over time. And so you've been doing this for decades now. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant set of goals because now I know what you're doing is going to be in support of achieving those goals.
That's interesting. I'm thinking when my first book, Call It Love or Call It Quits. Somebody said, yeah, these are the guys who wrote the book, Love It or Shove It. And I would speak on that. And Taryn, I was in my early 40s, and I was not self-conscious when I would speak on that. It was, I didn't worry about me, not when I was speaking. Before speaking, the night before a speech, I would lay awake throwing up in bed at hotels.
Totally.
I really hated it that much, or, just didn't hate it, but just was so fearful of it. But when that moment came, when the spotlights came on, all that disappeared. And I was just completely unaware of me. I didn't even exist. It was this passion and this message that had to come out.
Yeah.
And, when I would do gigs, you typically when you're a speaker doing gigs with a book that you brought to sell, you typically sell what I was told is that you can expect selling 25% product, 25% of the audience. You do a good job, 25% of the audience will buy your product. I was at 75%. 75% of the audience would buy the product, and that it certainly had to do with content. I mean, content had to be good, but it wasn't the content that sold them. It was the passion that sold them.
Well, that's just it. Passion is such a magnetic, electrifying energy that everybody wants to be in that bubble about or with. Now, you just made the point of channeling more beautifully than I could have made it, which is you said when you stood on stage, you were no longer you. It's like you disappeared and that just came through you. I mean, that is the definition of channeling. And when we went further in your Genius Lab, there were moments where I really saw that come through. And that is a great, what I call strategy to let yourself go, step into the void and let something bigger move through you. I mean, that is channeling, and you did it as a speaker. And that's what I'm saying. It's not mystical. We do this. And when we can do it more consciously, we can just get better.
Yeah, I love that. I so agree with stepping aside and let the wonder step in. Let the wonder take over. And there is no who's in charge or what's in charge. It's just whatever it says. And it's not even it saying it. It's just, I'm going to say it, and I know it's coming from somewhere else. I don't know what's coming from somewhere else, what it is, but it's clear. I speak with it. But I notice that with you too. That you have this you talked about a gift, and it is, it is a genius. I don't know if the genius, but your ability to read people and to read their genius and to read who they are. I've never seen anybody like it. I mean, it's shockingly accurate. And it's so accurate that it's almost disturbingly accurate, because I wasn't even ready for it. I didn't even know the things that you're going to talk about. I had never even thought about. The things you're going to talk about me, I had never thought about. And that's your genius, is the ability to look and see the genius in others. Would you agree that's part of your genius?
Yeah, and I think it is. I mean, going back to, we all have something that we're uniquely gifted with or good at. It's taken me many years at this point to hone that gift, and I've actively honed it, but I think it was always there. I've just gotten better and faster at it. And it's the ability to really look at someone and just, it's almost more of a feeling than a seeing. I feel, I see, I know what their gifts are. It's almost like, the way I see it is, I see how the divine or spirit moves through somebody in a really beautiful and unique way. And what their intent is for this life to explore, because those two things kind of go together. And so it is an intuitive ability that I've also had to hone. So,
Sure,
yeah.
of course.
And I love that, because for me, it's like seeing the beauty of creation itself. And I can see it through people and what they do, whether they're just starting something or they're masters at it. Because to me, it's the same frequency or the same kernel of energy, whether someone's 5 years old, 15 years old, 25 years old, or 85 years old. It's the same thing. It's just kind of how they've developed that kernel of energy.
You think it's the same frequency? You don't think the frequency changes?
I think
It's
it
on
evolves.
do you mean on the same channel?
If I were to have interviewed you, let's say 40 years ago, I guess your question is, would I have gotten the same thing? Would I have seen that in you the way I see it now? I probably would have. It might have had a few different evolutions, because here's what happens, right? I remember when you went into seminary at 30, 32, but then you went into business consulting not
Right.
long after that.
Right.
And that was a way for you to use your gifts and abilities in the business world, which is so needed. And so would I have seen the pureness of your connection with God? I might have. It's hard to know, because I don't know. I didn't know you, 30, 40 years ago, but I think I would have seen it. It just might have had a different expression, and how I would have coached
I'm
you
sure
on the
it would
path
have.
might have looked a little different, like, hey, your next move is this, not this, right? Because at any moment, people often come to me, what do I do next? And I can see what the next best thing for them to do is.
See,
Like, I can
that's a
hear that for them.
genius. That's your genius. How do you see that? What do you see? When it comes to next steps.
And I've tried to deconstruct myself. It's just really hard to even do yourself, because it just happens like that.
Now I'm going to put you through the pain.
But you said something that I've noticed as a pattern in my Genius Lab, which is, and it goes back to that channeling piece we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And channeling is where we connect into something bigger and we receive information. And in your case, you were standing on a stage. You said it's no longer you, and you're letting passion move through you, right? You're receiving that.
Right.
And then it kind of comes out in your words. For me, my intuition is a bit like that, is I get really quiet. I'm kind of no longer me. I'm connected into something bigger, and I just wait for the answer.
Yeah, that was very interesting too. In the Genius Lab, there is I was interviewed by a different Taryn Voget. I've known you for how many years? It's got to be
Long time.
decade. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's that long, or it's not far from that. But I saw a Taryn Voget I've never seen before, and it was the sort of intentionally intuitive, but so, you put yourself in this place, sort of the same place when I would do as a speaker. I would get out of the way and just let whatever is speaking through me speak through me. You get out of the way, and you let that whole person come through you, not just the words we're saying, but it's the personality, it's the person. You're reading everything. It's just like, it's very vulnerable to do a Genius Lab with you.
It is. And it's because my intent is to see somebody. I want to see their greatness, their genius, and to be seen at the most core level of your soul is a vulnerable experience and a powerful experience and a transformative experience all in the same moment. And to your point, and it's also a hard experience. and when I get to see somebody that clearly, it's a pleasure and a joy for me because I get to be in the divine with them in those moments. And so I find it beautiful and fascinating, and it's my passion because I love being in that energy of, I use the word divine because it's sort of a hard frequency to put a word to, but the energy of like the pureness of creation and beauty itself inside somebody.
The beauty of creation. What? The beauty of what?
What did I say? The beauty of creation and beauty itself.
Beauty itself, yeah. Because creation itself is beautiful.
It is.
Spectacular, yeah.
Yeah, so it is vulnerable. And I had an animal communicator in my Genius Lab recently, and she got mad. And this is also what happens is that you're being asked to dig deep. And often when people are very intuitive, there's a sacredness in that process. And for her, communicating with animals has a real intuitive sacredness to it. And when you pick that apart, it's kind of like sometimes people don't want that to be seen because they like how it feels as a magic rather than an actual strategy. And yet she was a total champ, and her strategy is utterly brilliant. I've actually been using her strategy. The great thing about Genius Lab is I get to crib all these strategies that are so good.
Sure.
And she's brilliant. But there was a moment where she got mad, and it was kind of like a little ego flare up. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean like, don't get too close to this. It's special to me. And yet she was a champ, and we got through it. And what
Did
came
she
out
go
was
there
really
anyway?
brilliant.
Was she able
Oh,
to
she
get
did.
there?
She was amazing. Yeah. Uh-huh. But to your point about being vulnerable, it's one of my intents is to make people feel safe because it can feel intimate in a way that is, like I said, it's like when you really get to the core of someone's heart and who they are, and they've never been seen before, it can feel a bit intimate in that way.
Yeah. Safety can't be expressed and articulated as something that is felt. It is a vibration. It is an energy that you give this safe energy that I'm not judging. I am, you're telling the curious person, I am curious, and you are the object of my curiosity. And that itself is vulnerable.
Yeah, because you have to really let yourself be seen. It's a unique experience. I had a shaman come through my Genius Lab, and his words were, that might be the most powerful transformation that I've ever experienced before. Because just the process of being seen so clearly and his genius featured so purely was deep for him, and it really changed who he was.
I don't understand how it would change if it's a whole process of supporting who he already is. What's changing?
Well, back to most people aren't seen and they don't let themselves be seen. I mean, that's most people. And so when you have the experience of somebody really interested in the most brilliant part of you, it feels really good. And it feels really like, oh my God, I'm finally recognized for who I am. And that can be really powerful.
Do you know how special all this is, Taryn?
I love this work so much. I think that it doesn't feel special because I'm the one doing it, but I just literally wrote a blog post on this, which is that most people, their genius is hiding in what feels ordinary to them. And so that's
Yeah.
probably me as well.
Yeah. 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 So how frequently do you do labs?
I do them pretty often. People hire me to do them if they're wanting to really understand how they do what they do. And I do them for my show, and I do them for people that I find interesting, like you. And so I do them pretty often.
Do you?
Yeah.
So as much as I hate to say I was wrong, I think I was wrong. We've pretty much covered everything I wanted to cover. You described the everyday genius. You described the specialness of the lab, and I'll put in the show notes. I've got your website. Is that the place that they go to find out to get?
Yeah. www.everydaygenius.tv is a great place to find me. My YouTube channel has really a lot of truly fantastic content out there. And
I
that's all
love it. I was
available.
listening to it yesterday, and I probably listened to 2 or 3 episodes in a row, just because I love to hear your voice.
Oh, thanks. It's content out there that I think is different than what everyone else is saying, and it's, I hope, very empowering for people, and it helps them find their genius, their passion, their purpose, understand how they can take whatever they're doing to the next level in a different way. So that's my intent. Future episodes of the Everyday Genius Show is going to feature some really cool guests. I'm excited about that coming up. So
you having guests? You having interviews?
I am. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun with the show right now.
Will they be live people, or will you be doing like Zoom calls? Or
it'll be a mix. I'm going to leave that as a surprise because I've got kind of a cool format that I'm playing around with right now for how to make it a little different and fun. And so it would be people that have come through my Genius Lab, and we can talk about how they do what they do. And so that'll be great. That's coming up. So yeah, if anyone's interested, they can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just go to Taryn Voget and you'll find me on YouTube.
Yeah, I have Taryn Voget. I put that on the show notes already, tarynvoget.com, but you want me to use the Everyday Genius TV?
Either one, they both work. Everydaygenius.tv probably has a little bit more of my stuff out there right now. And if anyone's interested in sessions, whether it's a private session or a Genius Lab or working with their company, I'm available for all that too. So I'm easy to find.
Yeah, and you are so needed, and just so essential. I think what you do is so unique. No one else is doing anything like it. It is just so Taryn Voget. This is just so you. You know what we're doing right now? You know where the idea came from to do this thing? You do know, right?
I remember vividly. I remember exactly where we were sitting.
Mm-hmm. With Elon Musk. Only he wasn't there.
Yeah, we were both executive coaching at SpaceX. We sat at a table and we were just talking, and I said, you'd be great for radio. I saw it, I felt it. Now, podcast is modern day radio, so
yeah. Well, it still goes on radio. It still goes on that just the voice.
Yeah. And what's crazy is 10 years ago, podcasting was not what it is today. I mean, it was more radio back then, but podcast is the modern day radio. And here we are. How long have you been doing the show for? 7 years?
Well, as long as when we had, I think about 7 years, 7 or 8 years.
7, 8 years, maybe something like that. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see how many episodes do I have? I have 365 episodes. So at 50, that's only 5 years of episodes. So that's not right.
Yeah, you might have skipped a few in there.
No, that's 7 years. 350.
7 years.
7 years. Yeah.
7 years. So you've been doing the show for 7 years. And it was I remember we had a conversation, and that was back to what I think that I love doing, which is really helping people figure out their next step. And it's fun for me because I get to see somebody really lit up doing what they love. And I think that this show has been such a beautiful thing you've created.
Yeah, it's just so everyone knows, Taryn's really into me changing the name of the show.
Well, I'd love an audience poll here now. To me, Charlie, back to what I said about your genius, and let me just reread it. Because then what I'm going to say is
so it's coming out of
Charlie's
my words,
genius,
not yours.
articulating the divine and articulating the nature of God and inspiring others on their journey. Now, Charlie's podcast is called The Next Chapter, and that at the time, 7-8 years ago, that made a lot of sense. But I actually think the better name in this red hot minute for Charlie would be The Divine Chapter.
See, I need, I'll have to use that as a promo.
Or Articulating the Divine might be another good title. Maybe the audience can weigh in on this.
Yeah, we'll see. Taryn Voget, you are absolutely too cool. And you didn't know if we were able to go enough time. I think we have gone now close to 50 minutes.
Perfect.
And you didn't think we'd be able to do it. And I just knew that was trusting my intuitive state. And also that's entrusting at the time to say, it's over. It's it. Time to go. The Ferris Bueller, what are you doing in here? After the movie, do you remember that movie?
I do remember that.
Yeah, get out of here.
Charlie, thank you so much for having me. I love our conversations. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I look forward to seeing what your next divine chapter looks like.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about that myself. I'm working on that now. We'll see what the divine has to say about my next chapter. Well, Taryn Voget, thank you so much for being on the show. You're great.
Thank you, Charlie.
And I want to thank everyone who's been listening to the show. You're great. We love having you. And so at the end, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.